When you start to feel like things should have been better this year, remember the mountains and valleys that got you here. They are not accidents, and these moments weren't in vain. You are not the same. You have grown and you are growing. You are breathing. You are living. You are wrapped in endless, boundless grace, and things will get better. There is more to you than yesterday. What an incredibly uplifting poem and just sentiment about the new year, new goals, by Morgan Harper Nichols. I just loved the last line of that. There is more to you than yesterday. One of the reasons I love to reset so much, whether it's a new year, new day, new month, is that chance to start over. It's really in those small changes and habits that life change happens, and it's just so cool that one day you can just decide to start, stop, or change something in your life, and that choice can potentially change your life forever. I think for a long time though, I felt like I couldn't participate in resets or goal setting the way the rest of the world does. Around the time I started to struggle with my health and develop chronic illness, it just felt discouraging because I had all of these ambitions and things I really wanted to do, and then my body just couldn't keep up with them, and I just would get so disappointed and so disheartened, and it just became easier to not have any goals at all. It hasn't been until the last year or two that I've really started to see that it is both very possible and probably more rewarding for me to set goals in the way that I do now. Instead of setting general goals, I found a method called objectives and key results, or OKRs. This is a method of goal setting you may have heard of in business because that's primarily how it's used, but I've kind of repurposed it to be used in my personal life, and I did a whole video on how, like, step by step to create goals using this method in your personal life, and I'll pop that video up here and in the description below. The gist of it is that you're basically auditing your entire life, noticing patterns and seeing what's at the root of kind of what you're not happy with in your life, or just what you would like to see changed. And then you kind of take a whole quarter, 3 months, to just kind of work on that area. And you're often creating a system and working on getting to the root of that problem versus just a one-off goal like eating healthier food or working out more. It encourages more long-term change, and I think it's particularly great for anyone with chronic illness because it honors any real limitations you have if you struggle with your health, because you have a whole 3 months to do this, while still empowering you to be working on or towards something, which even if, you aren't working right now to focus on your health or whatever, I don't think that matters. I think as humans, we all need some sort of work that is meaningful to us, or something to be working towards or on, to feel like we have some sort of purpose. And I think that's when we really thrive and feel at our best. So today I wanted to share some of my personal OKRs with you, as well as some general intentions for 2023, because I feel like it's always fun to have those. I'd love to invite you to pull up a notebook, your Notion, write down your thoughts, and dream through 2023 with me if you haven't already. I always thought the word of the year thing was weird, but the last year or two, I've had certain words that were almost like just impressed upon me. They just kept coming up everywhere that I would read or see something in TV shows and books. And there is a word that very consistently has been coming up like nonstop, and that is the word remember. I know it's not the most inspirational word, so let me explain. I think the first time the word really struck me was when I was doing a Bible study. I noticed that almost every time I would read the language in scripture, like that God remembered so-and-so, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, whoever he's talking about, it would immediately be followed up by God following through on a promise. On the flip side, when biblical characters are kind of talking about or to God, they're often referencing remembering what God has done or meditating on what God has done so that they remember whose they are, which is like a whole Lion King moment for me, Remember who you are, Simba. And there's a lot of power in that, when we remember who we are, who God is, and what God has done, it makes it that much easier to love Him and trust Him and not lean on our understanding and do dumb stuff. So that's something I'd like to do more of in 2023. And kind of from a health nerd perspective, I've been super into brain health the last year and healing the nervous system, and a lot of what is involved in that is actually working with memory, which is the root word of remember. If you've done therapy or things like the DNRS, you are literally taking memory by memory, you're going through them and reframing them, changing the way that you experience or perceive those events today in your mind leads to transformation and renewal of your mind, which I think we all want. So that's probably my biggest intention for 2023, is really to remember more of who God is, what He has done, and His story, so I can live in the fullness of that and not get stuck in my own feelings, which are not always true. And then to continue to strengthen my memory in a physical way so that, hopefully I can move more towards healing and feeling better in the coming year, because I think that's kind of been my biggest roadblock in healing so far. So like I mentioned, OKRs are a little more thoughtful, intentional. My husband Sam and I usually sit down for like a solid day and kind of vision cast as a family and go over like our family OKRs, and then we each have individual ones for the both of us. So I'm just going to share my personal OKR for today. So for me, when I was thinking about all the different areas of my life, and I was thinking about the different things that I'm unhappy with, the things that I am happy with, things that are within my control, a lot of what it came down to for me was that it felt like my brain was a hard drive and the storage was just full. I quit my day job last year to focus on healing, but healing itself is a full-time job, especially if you're a little more holistic minded like me. I'm waking up and going outside and doing walks first thing to get my circadian rhythm going. I'm keeping track of all my supplements. I'm dry brushing, I'm doing red light therapy, I've got treatments, I've got doctor's appointments every week, and so grateful to be able to do all of that, by the way, but it's a full-time job. I've got to keep track of all this stuff. Some days I feel like I don't have the energy to do all of it, and then I make these videos and I do a lot of the mental labor for our homemaking tasks because I can't always do the physical as much. Sam tends to take that on. And, it's just life. Like, we all have these things. And so the question I was trying to really ask myself is like, how can I free up the storage space? And it came down to a couple of things, but my main OKR is to increase my brain's hard drive space so I have more room for life-giving, thriving activities. And when I was trying to figure out how to do this, I remembered Steve Jobs and the story of how he would just kind of wear the same thing every day because it was one less decision that he had to make, and it freed up his brain space. So I was like, okay, how do I do more of that in my life? And a lot of the stuff that tends to eat up my brain space is just, when you're running low on something, things not having a home, clutter being everywhere, just not great systems being set up in place. So that's kind of my goal for this next quarter, and I'm sharing more practically how I'm doing that more over on Instagram. Yeah, basically as much as I can automate in my life right now, that is the goal. And I'm already starting to feel the effects of it. It's beautiful. I cannot say enough. Outside of OKRs, I feel like it's fun to have intentions and kind of general stuff you'd like to do this year, but I'm a little more open-handed with these things, and I'm okay if they don't happen because ultimately God's kind of in control of the picture and we can't always control everything anyway, but I think it's still fun to have a vision and kind of things you're looking forward to. So these are some of those things for me. I would say past my word of the year and my OKR, one of my bigger intentions for 2023 is to stop waiting to be healthy to live my life. And I don't mean to be out of touch by saying that I'm very well acquainted with how debilitating health can be. And just because I say that doesn't mean that the real limitations I have won't exist anymore. For me, it's more of a mindset thing. For years and years and years, I mean, since I've been dealing with health stuff, I've just desperately wanted to do certain things. I've wanted to go back to school and be a practitioner and help people heal. I would notice that every time I would try a different treatment or a different protocol and I didn't respond well to it and I didn't improve, I would just be devastated and I would be so angry with God, and I'd be like, I don't get it. Like, it's been 7 years now. Like, why am I not getting better? Wouldn't I glorify you more? Wouldn't I be of more use to you if I got to do these things and help people heal, or whatever my dreams were? And that just caused so much inner turmoil in my own life. And it really took the end of summer 2022 for me to get to the point, after 6.5 years, for me to be like, okay, like, I have to surrender this and just accept where my life is. Not settle, like, I'm definitely still going to be pursuing treatments and getting better, but just really surrendering that journey to the Lord and learning to show up every day and saying, hey, what are we doing today? What do you have for me today? How can I learn from you today? And for me, especially in my career, I just felt like I wouldn't be happy until I could go back and be a practitioner. And now I'm starting to think of ways that I can feel purposeful and useful now, whether that is making videos, or I'm also kind of thinking, praying through maybe life coaching, because that is something I would be qualified and excited to do now. I don't know exactly what that will look like yet, but I think you'll definitely see more of me on here this year, and I'm feeling really excited and inspired about that for sure. Another intention I have this year is to develop my personal style and wear clothes that make me feel good more. I know that might sound a little vain, but I think I've very, very, very slowly started to do this in 2022, and I notice the days that I wear real clothes, it's not like my health challenges go away, but I just feel better about myself. So I physically feel better, feel more confident. I feel like you just also have to find things in life when there are hard things or limits that you have. You have to find things that are fun, and I don't know, fashion's just become kind of fun to me, and I really love just the timeless basic style, which I know is probably boring to a lot of people, but I feel the best in it, and I just love that things never really go out of trend. So if you ever see anything like that, let me know so I can save it to my list. I'm slowly building a capsule wardrobe, but I would love to do more of that in 2023. I would love to take more pictures this year. I have next to 0 pictures of me and my husband since our wedding that I like. No decent pictures. We don't go out a lot because I'm just really struggling with my health, and then when I do, I just get so caught up and so happy to be out that I just forget to take pictures, and I really want to do more of that. I just got a new phone, so it has a very nice little camera, and I'm like, I gotta make sure to take more pictures this year. So if you ever see me on stories on Instagram, be like, girl, are you taking pictures of you or you and Sam? Do it. Hold me accountable. This one's more of a spiritual intention, but this year I would love to deepen my understanding of scripture, of the Bible, in a story format. So I spent most of 2022 actually just studying Genesis. I did Jen Wilkins. She has 2 studies because there's like 50 some chapters in Genesis, and she really taught you how to study scripture. And I've been familiar with Bible literacy for years and how important context is. Jen Wilkins often will say, like, you wouldn't just open a letter and not look at the return address and see who it's from and then start it in the middle of the letter. Like, that's how most people read their Bibles. And I knew that, but I guess I was really just lazy and didn't want to put in the work. I also feel like part of that is just when you have such a hyper or hypoactive nervous system, it's hard to do that. And so once I started some of these nervous system things, it became a lot easier for me to slow down and do things like that. So if you're the same way, like, don't feel guilty. I think part of that is just biological, but it just really struck me how much more I understood not just like the stories in Genesis, but like God himself, because our relationship with him is like based off of our perception of him. And how do you have a correct perception of him when you don't really understand the Bible in its full context and the intention with which each scripture was written? And it's not like each book, like Genesis, is separate from Exodus. It's one continuing story. And there's a really good resource I just got called The Story. Don't know who the author is. It just says the foreword is by Max Lucado. But if you just look up The Story, the Bible as one continuing story of God and his people, it's written like a novel and it goes through all of scripture. So this could be a really good resource if you're wanting to do the same. I'm going through it now. Yeah, I think this will probably be like a lifelong intention that I have. But specifically, I think reading scripture and understanding it more in that context, like when was this book written? Why was it written? Who was it written to? Like, who was the intended audience? What was the intention behind writing this? Noticing patterns, noticing words that come up a lot. What words don't I know? Taking the time to look them up. It's work. Like, it's for sure work, but it's so rewarding, I think, when you come out of it and you have a deeper understanding of these stories and of God. Like this last year, I feel like I've never been as close to God in my life. So yeah, I would love to keep that up and just continue to have a deeper and deeper understanding of God's story. Last, I obviously have some health goals in there. My biggest health intention of this year is to move on to the next thing if something isn't working. So I work with a mold and Lyme specialist, someone who's very familiar with very difficult cases like me. And I went to just go see my GP for like my yearly visit. In a very, very kind way, he just said, you know, I'm just a little concerned because you're kind of in exactly the same place you were when I saw you like a year ago. I was like, yeah, I know, me too. Like, we're not just talking about slow healing, like we're talking about no healing. And he was like, well, talk to me, like what have you been trying? And he was like, yeah, I think everything you've been trying sounds great. You know, just like don't stay in the protocol or the routine or whatever it is you're trying. If it's not working after like 3 to 6 months, like let's move on, because eventually you will find something that works. And everyone is so unique and their body responds differently. You just have to find what it is for you that's gonna help you get over this hump. At the beginning of 2022, my specialist actually really wanted me to try neurofeedback, which I even talked about on here. It's basically a more passive form of like brain nervous system healing, and it's expensive, but I was also just kind of really nervous about it. I was like, well, let's just try therapy and we'll see how that goes instead. I've been in therapy for a year now, and emotionally it's been great. I feel like I've made strides and that's been better, but physically, the whole reason we wanted to start it was because I am so reactive. My body is so reactive to very, very gentle protocols and treatments that we're trying, to the point where we're thinking like it's because my nervous system is so out of whack, and so neurofeedback would help bring my responses down to a healthy level so I could tolerate some of these things. And now I feel like I'm kind of ready to move on and to try it. That seems to really help move the needle for a lot of people in my situation. For me right now, it's a little more of a financial issue because it is quite expensive, but I at least have enough we're gonna go get the initial brain map scan done and then just start a couple sessions and see how I even respond to that. Kind of go from there. I'm nervous, but at the same time, I know my GP is right and I know it is just time to move on if something isn't working. Some other health things I'd love to do in this next year, like really get in the habit of doing, is sunlight exposure the very first thing when I wake up in the mornings. This has incredible benefits for your hormone and sleep, your circadian rhythm. The 1 month that I did this, I had a period that wasn't insanely awful, and I have endometriosis if you're new here, so usually they're really bad. I'm getting back in the habit of doing this again. I also really want to get my oral health care kind of taken care of. I've shared a little bit about that saga in a couple vlogs ago, but for a lot of people, their oral health is what holds them back. They can have cavitations where mold and Lyme bacteria and all these things can live, root canals, metal fillings. I even have a permanent retainer, which I haven't heard too many bad things about, but I'm just like, it's metal just sitting in your mouth, so I'm gonna get that removed and kind of eliminate that as a potential problem area. I'd also love to figure out how to take care of my hair this year. I've started to experience some hair loss, which I recently had a Dutch hormone panel done, so there's some hormonal stuff going on, which may just kind of be out of my control for now, but I feel like part of it too is I have no idea how to naturally take care of your hair. I see a lot of these like holistic girlies do hair oiling, and I know there's like protective things you can wrap your hair in instead of like a towel, or like you can sleep in kind of protective hair stuff. And I don't know, I really like my hair. It's one of the features I really like about myself, and I'm really sad. I'm like dealing with hair loss, and so I just kind of want to figure that out a little better. It's definitely not the end of the world. My health and other things are so much more important, but if I have the headspace for it, I think I would like to do that this year too. And I didn't write this down, but I think my last intention I have for this year, and it's kind of the whole shift in my channel, is to just learn how to romanticize life more, even with chronic illness, even with these challenges. This is such a hard journey, and it's very lonely, and I'm not gonna pretend that it's just easy, but I think it's so important to hold on to these small joys in this so that you can like keep your hope alive and find life to be worth living. So that's just a big core value I have on this channel, but as a person, I want to get even better at doing that and just finding ways to make my life special and feel a little bit happier when things can just be hard sometimes. If you're setting your goals or intentions for 2023, remember to go to the OKR video here, where I break down exactly how to create goals that are going to make a long-lasting impact and move you forward in life. I hope you have a wonderful start to the new year, and if you're comfortable sharing, I would really love to hear what your goals and intentions are for the new year below. See you soon.